Subcommittee, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank Chairman Brady and all the members of the Ways and Means staff. You have worked tirelessly in order to bring this bill forward. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here today. And my friend Mr. Larson, I notice he wears a pin with the picture of John Kennedy, one of my favorite presidents of all time. Let me just read from a speech that President Kennedy gave December the 14th, 1962. This is 55 years ago, and he gave it in an address to the Economic Club of New York. Our true choice is not between tax reduction on the one hand and the avoidance of larger federal deficit on the other. It is increasingly clear that no matter what party is in power, so long as our national security needs keep rising, an economy hampered by restrictive tax rates will never produce enough revenues to balance our budget, just as it will never produce enough jobs or enough profits. Only full employment can balance the budget, and tax reduction can pave the way to that employment. The purpose of cutting taxes now is not to incur a budget deficit, but to achieve the more prosperous, expanding economy, which can bring a budget surplus. Keeping that in mind, and I hear the debate going back and forth, and I would just encourage all of our members, you are going to have a choice today to take your voting card, and you're going to put it in the voting machine, and you can push a green button that says go, putting this nation back on track, making America the greatest economic power in the world. Or you can push a red button and say, you know what, just not something I can vote for today because it's just not exactly what I want. Next week, 50 million Americans will travel because they want to come home. They want to come home for the holidays. They want to come home for Thanksgiving. This bill is a Thanksgiving bill. This is a jobs bill, because what we're telling corporate America is we want you to come home. We want to make this a more favorable environment for you to live, to work, to succeed, because we know the true success in business is only a sustainable business model. So when you tax people with the highest rate in the industrialized world, when you regulate people that puts them in an uncompetitive advantage on the shelf, they can't exist. And so where do they go? They have to leave home to go overseas to find that answer. Now, I just want to go over some things that really are important. A friend of mine by the name of George Abraham is a basketball coach, and George and I were talking one day, and we were talking about the value of winning. And George said to me, you know what, Mike? The only position you want to be in is the number one position. And I said, really? He goes, yes. Because anything other than finishing first is you finish with the rest. If you were to take a survey, and Forbes did, and they said, if you were starting a business today, where would you start that business? And right away I would say, are you kidding me? It's the United States of America because of who we are, our greatness. And no, there's 22 other countries that people say, I would rather go someplace else than do it right here in America. That is incredible. And when we talk about where we are as a people, listen to these figures. These are not my figures, by the way. This is the Tax Foundation. Cuts for Americans at every economic level. Reduces taxes by almost $1,200 for every average-sized middle-income American family. Reduces taxes by almost $2,000 for every average-sized middle-income family in Pennsylvania's 3rd District. Grows national GDP by 3.5%. Increases American wages by 2.7%. Increases after-tax incomes for every taxpayer by 3.8% in the long run. Increases after-tax incomes for medium families in Pennsylvania by over $2,300. And it creates almost 900,000 new American jobs. And it will create, in my state of Pennsylvania, over 36,000 new jobs. So I say this is a jobs bill. This is a revenue raiser for us. This is about bringing people back home. This is about more take-home pay for every hard-working American guy and gal who's out there that gets up every day and gets up to do one thing, and that is to protect their families and work in the best interest of their country. I'm just asking you today to look at this card and know that you have, within the power of your vote, to unleash the greatest economy in the world, to unshackle it from a tax code that makes it impossible to compete globally, that overregulates it and forces it offshore and then blames them for leaving. This is a come on back home. This is don't leave home, stay here. We're on your side. We're going to work with you and we're going to get there. And so I asked my friends on both sides of the aisle, let's do what's right for America. If it's right for America, it's right for Republicans, it's right for Democrats, it's right for independents, it's right for libertarians, it's right for America. This is the right time to do the right thing. My friends, we cannot stay where we are. A stand-pat hand is a non-winning hand. The ability to move forward, the ability to absolutely not just participate in a global economy, but dominate a global economy and give every single American the faith in the future and restore the faith that they need to have in this body that we are doing the best thing in their interest every single day that we come here. And thank you, Chairman, and I yield back.
Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. The chair will now receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed S. 807, an act to provide anti-retaliation protections for antitrust whistleblowers.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted to have Mr. Kelly as he describes sports teams. We've discovered he's a closet Patriots fan. With that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, whose history in terms of revenue and revenue collection is well known to the Congress. Ms. Chu, for 2 minutes.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
One thing is clear about the GOP tax scam. Corporate interests get a huge giveaway. They get a windfall tax break. Who pays for it? The middle class. Who wins? Corporations, billionaires, millionaires, the Trump family. Who loses? Women, families, seniors, teachers, students. As a former Los Angeles Community College teacher of 20 years, I can't believe what Republicans are doing to students. They rip away critical benefits that help our students pay for their college education. They eliminate the student loan interest deduction and choose to tax graduate students on money they've never even received by taxing the tuition assistance they get for working for their schools. This bill even pinches students when they're still in elementary school by taxing their teachers who claim a deduction for the school supplies they pay for out of their own paycheck. One teacher in my area even pays for the ink in her classroom printer. They don't ask to be repaid, just to be able to deduct the expense. If corporations get to keep this deduction, why not our teachers? And then, if that's not cruel enough, they eliminate the deduction for extraordinary medical expenses for those with Alzheimer's and cancer. And this week, we learned that Republicans plan to pay for these corporate cuts by causing 13 million people to lose their health insurance, a move that will increase premiums by 10% and result in individuals with pre-existing conditions losing access to life-saving, affordable coverage. And then, Republicans eliminate the state and local tax deduction, which is used by over 6 million California households to prevent their hard-earned dollars from being taxed twice. Of all the states, California will actually face the largest net tax increase from this bill of $12.1 billion in 2027 alone. California Republicans who vote for this bill ought to be ashamed of themselves, and the voters need to hold them accountable. 36 million middle-class families will be stuck holding the bag under this plan. For what? For tax cuts, for corporate interests. This is unacceptable.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to one of our key members of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Renacci.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 1, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. First of all, I want to thank President Trump for making this a priority, but I especially want to thank Chairman Brady for his tireless efforts and leadership in bringing this legislation to the floor today. 3 decades, there was a 24-year-old starting a business in Ohio. He borrowed money and started hiring people. As he grew his business, he didn't take a paycheck and kept hiring hardworking middle-class Americans. But then, as he started looking over things, he couldn't hire any more because of a tremendous tax bill owed to the federal government. That's what small business entrepreneurs face in today's tax environment. That 24-year-old was me. Luckily, I was a certified public accountant. I was able to figure out a way to make my business work and grow without our suffocating tax code, or through our suffocating tax code. Unfortunately, most small business owners do not experience the tax code complexities until they get started. They have an idea, They start their business, and then the government steps in, and they're not CPAs. If my 3 children were to ask me today if they should risk and start a business, I would be hesitant to push them down that path, which is why I support H.R. 1, which lowers the tax rate for businesses and gives hardworking taxpayers a break. This bill puts more money in their pockets to do with it what is important to them, those hardworking taxpayers, not letting the government take it and waste it. Lowering the individual rate will give Americans the opportunity to choose where they want to spend their money, instead of banking on a government to spend it for them. On the business side, the harsh reality is that America has become an uncompetitive place to do business. With the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world, it should not be a surprise that businesses are relocating to countries with better business climates. Fortunately, by bringing the rate down to 20%, we can make America one of the most competitive countries in the world to do business. It's hard for U.S. companies to compete against companies based in Canada, where the federal income tax rate is 15%, Ireland at 12.5%, or even UK, which will be 17% by 2020. Businesses set their prices to be competitive. The U.S. has to set its business rate to compete as well. The high corporate tax rate is not just a Wall Street problem, it's a Main Street problem. Business entities do not pay taxes, people do. The burden of the corporate tax rate falls on 3 categories of people: shareholders, customers, and employees. Corporations do not pay taxes, we do. This bill helps companies compete and hire more people and give them a more competitive wage. This bill gives individuals more money to spend on what they want, not what the government wants. This bill simplifies the tax code for hardworking Americans. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this historic reform so more Americans can choose where their money goes, not Washington. I urge passage of H.R. 1 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.